like to start off by just saying thank you for everyone coming. This is a bigger crowd than what I expected, and so I'm really grateful to see that. We spent a lot of time and effort putting together the comprehensive plan, and because of that, we felt like it was very important for all of us to go over it, to see what's there, and to make sure that everyone understands that this is a living, breathing document. It's a working document to be used for a lot of decision making, and use it as a guide. So I appreciate you coming out. You know, this is a pretty big share of the cream of the crop for the city. All of you here are actively involved. You do a lot for the community, and hopefully this can help us all be on the same team and give a plan for moving the city forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Lena.
So I just want to give you a little overview of what is going to take place. And first, my first caveat is we are not going to deep dive into implementing this comp plan, and it's too late for edits. So if you've got things that as we go through you feel like, well, this may need to be reviewed, make some notes. It can be, it's a living document. As we move forward, things can be added and changed as it should be. That's what makes it living. So what I'm going to do is I am going to give you an overview because this is being recorded, so the general public is going to get to see this as well. So we want them to understand what a comprehensive plan is and why it's important and how we plan on using it for all of these entities. So before I jump into that, can I see the hands of all the council members? Can I see the hands of all of our P&Z? Can I see hands of economic development? And then our historic preservation? And any guests? Anybody? And we've got a guest. So I wanted you guys to see who's here in the presence of this, because it really is, we're kind of people who make things move, and so I'm hoping by understanding this a little bit more, we are able to make some of this stuff happen that's in here, because a lot of work went into getting it to this point. And I need somebody to hit the light. You guys that have these in front of you, we're going to refer to them when the lights come back on. So don't try to read and follow along. But anyway, so first thing is, what makes this plan comprehensive? This not only comes from our comprehensive plan, but from someone who trains planners. You may hear a comprehensive plan referred to as strategic, a development plan. There's all kinds of names. For the purpose of the city of Weiser, ours is a comp plan. And what it covers is the entire city of Weiser jurisdiction, county impact areas, and possible annexations. It addresses all the physical elements, utilities, transportation. You guys could read that. And the plans are for a relatively long period of time. So this is an interesting discussion. 20 years. The reason that they, and most cities, 20 years is as far as you want to plan out, because it's a generation. And so when those 20-year-olds get to be 40, there's a whole new perspective that's going to hit your community. So you don't want to try to outplan your generational changes. What we like, and take the senior center, people talk about, well, what is it going to be in 20 years? Is it going to be all computers? And so they say, stay within your 20-year time frame, which ours does. The Weiser Comprehensive Plan, this is ours specifically. They address 3 elements. It guides our actions, policies, and investments, and it looks at short range and long range. You don't want to plan just for a year. You want to take that year and go, but what does that look like in 20 years? And then it also has the strategies. This is the important part. This was developed from the Technical Advisory Committee, the Weiser staff, City Council, Planning and Zoning, and was influenced heavily by the community. And we'll talk about how the community got involved here in just a couple slides. Is it a legal document? It is not a legal document, but the Local Land Use and Planning Act of Idaho requires that you adopt and utilize your comp plan. And it says, although it is not a law that must be adhered to in the most stringent sense, it is recommended that it should be used to make ongoing decisions, and you should follow it to the intent. So can we legally be held to every decision we make or everything that's in the comp plan? No. But should we try to follow it to the best of the intent of everything that's in it? So this just gives everybody a chance to see, for the public who isn't holding a comp plan, this is how long it took to put it together and who was involved. We had an advisory group meeting. They did a community survey, which was open to everybody. They got 150 responses. Then they had a planning and zoning work session, which I know planning and zoning revisited this more than once to give some input. And then a community workshop that was held over at the Vendome, and they had everything laid out and invited the public to come and review it. And then they also put it online. So that's how the input came together to come up with what is now our comp plan. So this is the vision statement that came out of that Weiser is a safe and livable community, welcoming to a diverse range of individuals, attractive to families and businesses, and celebrates Weiser's unique history, heritage, and a small town feel. Doesn't that make you feel good? I like that vision statement. I think it covers a lot of what we are about. So, can everybody read that? I see some heads saying no. Then we're in trouble here in a slide or two, Larry, sorry. So the key priorities were to continue to enhance and foster a community that's attractive and affordable for people in all stages of life, and foster a community that is diverse and has a rich economy that supports Weiser's residents, visitors, and neighboring communities. Enhance active and vibrant community spaces and activity centers that serve a diversity of interests, and improve upon systems of governance to smoothly implement this plan, along with other policies and projects citywide over the next 10 to 20 years. I know you all can read that, but for those in the back. We are not going to go through this in depth, but I wanted to show the public that this is the goal areas, this is how the comp plan is laid out. It identifies 10 different areas. It says what it affects, and then it isn't just the area that is identified, it actually gives you some of the things that should happen within those things. Population growth. We need to continue to support diverse populations. Recreation, open space. We need to improve and maintain our recreational sites, facilities, and opportunities. So each one of these areas, sustainability, economic vitality, transportation, transportation I want you to kind of home in on for a second, because in the top 10 priorities, transportation was 5 of those. So clearly people felt like that's something we need to put at the top of our project list. Public service, coordinate with the Weiser School District and private schools to plan for future growth. Lots of conversation happening on our school level right now, so I think we definitely have hit on something that's important. Good governance was the other one. So I have put some of the graphic information on our population along with the prioritization and implementation top 10. I want you to kind of look at these. It's a little distracting because I know you're going to be looking at both. But here's the interesting thing about the population is if you looked at that, it says that by 2030, 6,100 people. Well, look at where we are right now. That's like another 100 people. and so people say, well, how can that be? We've got these subdivisions, our schools are like maxing out. We should have a lot more population. But what is kind of interesting in all of this is over the years, if you look at the information, we used to be very heavy in our senior population. So as you watch, do I call it attrition? As our senior population decreases and we have families that move in, we're just kind of seeing a shift. Not so much that we just keep seeing this growth. Do our subdivisions affect that? We're going to see a little movement within the city because you'll have people moving out of the existing places. But what was interesting to me at a meeting recently is that we've got a lot of people that are bringing their kids into the school system from other communities. So our families necessarily aren't just growing right now as our population base, but we are seeing that with housing and stuff, that may affect what we see. And we'll have some discussion, open discussion on that in a minute. So anyway, these represent the top 10 priority projects as identified. Encourage the thoughtful development of entryway corridors through implementation of overlay districts and highlight downtown Weiser and commercial centers. I really do think that was a great first priority because if you want people to come in and visit our community, we've got to figure out how to get them off of those outer corridors into the downtown area. So that will be the #1 priority. Devise and adopt design review guidelines for specific development, recreation, open space. Continue to improve and maintain park spaces and recreational amenities through the city of Weiser. Oh, I want to go back. Let's go back one slide here. So there's the age breakdown. See how that shifted to our 35%. Now it's our 35 to 64-year-olds are our largest population. So those are people who are buying homes. Our 65 has decreased 23%, which I can't tell you what statistic, how long ago it was, but that statistic when I was at the hospital, so it was about 43%. So that's how much of a shift we've seen in the last 10 years.
Lady, can
Yes.
I ask, I can't see that for sure, but is the age breakdowns, is it still like 19 to the second one 19 to 25 or something like that?
So it's 0 to 19 is 26% of our population, and 20 to 34 is 16%. So 34 is the cutoff, and then 35 to 64 is the next.
Okay. Do you know why the ages there wouldn't be for the same number of years? Because the biggest part of our population, 65%, is over like a 30-year period, while the smallest is over a 15-year period.
So Larry, what I can tell you from gathering statistics for our hospital demographics for the community and stuff, these are pulled from 3 different sites usually, and you have to go with what they provide you, and apparently this is the age breakdown that's being presented now. I do not know why, but that would be a good...
Okay.
It's the 2020 census.
Yeah, and it's a 2020 census is one of the things they take it from. But there's,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just thinking to myself that if you assume that bigger age group is half the younger half and half the older half, then there's not a lot of difference in if you take the same number of years in those, well, actually in all of the age groups.
I'll bet there is a reason behind it. I do not know that, but
Okay.
I'm gonna check and see
Just curious.
what it says. Yeah, see if that's what the state's doing now for
Yeah.
census. That could be it, that we're just following the states. And so you clearly can't read the housing in here, but July 2022, the median market value was $315,000. And the median income was $37,552. This is pretty much where Weiser has been, where 13.6% of Weiser's population is below the federal poverty level. And that continues, as you can see, clear through July 2022. So the fourth priority was to devise and adopt design review guidelines for specific areas of development. I want you to look at the goal area. So it says Area 2, recreation and open space. So those goal areas in the comp plan, it's divided into all of these goals, and there's probably, some of them have 5 to 10 pages that reflect where all the information is on how to go about that and why it was selected and the implementation for that. So that's what the goal areas are. Those are in your comp plan, and that's how you would find them. And continue to improve and maintain park spaces and recreational amenities throughout the city of Weiser also. And isn't it interesting that recreation and open space were both 4th and 5th on our priorities? So I know, Larry, you can't read this one. But
No, I can't.
so down there, this is just giving us an idea of where the industry, what percentage of our employment is in these industries. Which this one, if you look at healthcare and manufacturing, I want, the next statistic is gonna reflect that in a lot of ways. So anyways, 6th priority is create a vibrant and strong economy in downtown Weiser through the exploration of a business improvement district and other means to encourage revitalization efforts, investment, and placemaking and utilization of the historic commercial core. 7 is research and consider the development of a Weiser business and retention plan. Apply for Idaho Department of Recreation Trails Program funding and other grants to further expand pathways and pedestrian corridors that create connectivity to the Weiser Trail and other recreational amenities. That is another transportation. Incorporate walkability and bikeability community improvements throughout Weiser by evaluating current conditions, upgrading and expanding the sidewalk network, encouraging property owners to construct, improve, and repair existing sidewalks, and through implementing new pedestrian pathways and possibly bike lanes. And 10 was to consider the creation and implementation of design standards as future development occurs to encourage pedestrian-friendly environments and maintain and improve Weiser's built environment and community aesthetics. Transportation again. These projects are more immediately actionable, are feasible given available resources, and are designed to help the city of Weiser achieve the goals and values articulated by the community. That statement there is really, really important. It's achievable. It's what the community has identified, and that statement right there just said, okay, we can do this. We just need to take it on. So what I put these up here for is within the context of your comp plan. So we look at population and growth. This is the implementation things that they gave us specifically to those areas. Okay, we have this as a priority. Population and growth is an issue. Here are some of the things you can do to address those issues and improve and make a difference. But look over here at the timing. This is a 1 to 3 year plan. This is ongoing. You'll see some of them that say 5, and you'll see some of them that say 1 year. Okay, tuck that away, because a 1 year plan, we have to talk about that, and we will here in just a second. Then the lead department, under these, they didn't just say do it, they said, all right, who's gonna lead this? Where does this come out of? Who does it affect? And so you can see the city staff, planning and zoning, city staff, city council, planning and zoning. So this is for population and growth. There are some of these areas which, when the lights come on, we'll take a look at. They directly affect economic development. Well, we know we've got a lot of economic development people in here. We need to be looking at that and saying, how do we affect this change? We can't leave everything to the city staff. Let's take a look at it because we are here to help the city. This is just one other example. Recreation and open space, you saw that in the top 10. Long-term, 1 to 3 years, develop and implement a historic preservation plan. I don't know, is there a historic preservation plan in place now? So what a thing to task. It says Weiser Historic Preservation Commission, Planning and Zoning, City Council. An interesting thing, since I don't know what one looks like. But so anyway, there in the plan, everything has kind of an outline of what you can do to help implement these. If you'll hit the lights, Natasha. Here is a workshop. This wasn't about me reading a whole bunch of stuff. However, I did that for the fact that a lot of people that are going to watch this probably have never even heard of a comp plan and are going to look at it and go, well, okay, they're going to change all these things and make stuff happen. And clearly, if you look at a 43-page document, 63-page document, yeah, how are we going to make all this happen? Well, city staff and city council, it refers a lot to them making this stuff happen. That, no, you can't make it all happen with a staff that's already doing what they do. But this comp plan is important. And the only way that we can make it happen is we have to come up with some way to start making these things move. And so I've had a lot of conversation with the mayor, with Natasha. Tony and I talked a little bit about it. So before we start talking a little bit about like how do you start this process, you've got this document, now what do we do with it? As the mayor said, does this no good on the shelf? But it's got so much in it and so many things that say 1 to 3 years. I don't know about you guys, but volunteer time gets a little bit obstructed when there's so much on the plate that we can take on. So I'm going to reach out to Tony and just ask Tony from a P&Z standpoint, and you and I have talked about implementation and planning and zoning stepping into this. Could you share with the group what are some of the challenges of stepping into this comp plan and trying to start moving the bar does planning and zoning face?
First of all, thank you for putting this meeting together, Lena. Just some of you know that I've been in the trenches for a while.
How do you stand?
Well, I think they can see me.
Can they see you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to do this on a regular basis. That's part of the challenge that we have. And we've had a comp plan here now for almost 25 years, and we've not really taken much action to implement it. And I think part of it comes to, well, whose responsibility is it? And then whose responsibility is it to make sure it does get done? And so from a planning and zoning standpoint, I thought just stopping for a minute and sharing what the law says we're supposed to be doing would be helpful. And so I'm starting really right out of our city code book for Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm going to read the powers and duties because it ties right into this. Said commission shall conduct and hold all public hearings where required by zoning laws of this code and the laws of the state hereto. A, recommend and make suggestions to the City Council for the adoption of coordinated plans and for the physical development of the city for the formation of zoning districts. Make recommendations and suggestions concerning the laying out, widening, extending, and locating of streets, roads, and highways, and the relief of traffic. Make recommendations and suggestions concerning density of population and development of land within the jurisdiction of the city. Make recommendations and suggestions concerning the future growth, development, and beautification of the city in respect to its public buildings, streets, parks, grounds, and lands consistent with the future growth and development of the city in order to promote the public health, morale, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants thereof. Give recommendations and suggestions and advice to individuals concerning landscaping or location of buildings, structures, or works to be erected, constructed, or altered by or for such individual. Cooperate with other appointed boards or commissions for the general welfare of the city. Recommend and suggest platting and subdivisions to the city council. Review and recommend on all subdivision plans and other proposed land developments. Review and make recommendations on all amendments to the zoning code, including revisions. Review all special exceptions permitted under the law. Undertake such surveys and studies and prepare such reports as may be required or requested by the council to carry out the planning program. Recommend and suggest the zoning districts with regulations to be enforced in such district in accordance with the comp plan and designed to lessen congestion in the streets. Conserve the value of buildings by appropriate regulations and encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the city. There's a couple more, but you know, as a volunteer planning and zoning commissioner, that's a lot of responsibility. And the comp plan is the document that is supposed to guide us in all of that. And so in terms of how we can only take it one bite at a time. And
So, Tony, so now that you've kind of looked at the comp plan, and how do you see your planning and zoning addressing some of these things? What you've kind of shared with me, some discussions you guys have had about trying to get more educated on what the responsibilities are, and then trying to include it in meetings more regularly. Do you want to share that?
well, we've had some discussion at planning and zoning, and just by way of information, it's probably about a year ago when planning and zoning was first presented with this comp plan, and basically it had already been prepared in full by the time we had an opportunity to see it for the first time, and were given 10 minutes and asked for comment. So we kind of, you know, we didn't have a whole lot of direct input in its creation or how those goals and objectives were assigned. So we took a few months and kind of wrestled with it a little bit, made some recommendations to the mayor on things we'd like to see maybe modified, and among those were the group responsible for doing some of that implementation. But when we passed it, when we recommended its adoption to the city, we knew that there were things that still needed to be better fleshed out with the plan. And our agreement was that we would sort of take that on, take that responsibility, make it a priority, and every time there was an opportunity in our agenda to discuss the plan, that's kind of how we would go about. We haven't really had that opportunity yet, so it remains to be seen, but based on just my experience through the years with planning and zoning, I think one of the first things that we want to do is go back and make sure our current codes are in compliance with the plan. And that includes looking at the land use map. And for people that may not be familiar with maps, within city limits, the city is divided into different land use types, residential, commercial, and that sort of thing. But there's also a land use map which says for those areas beyond our city limits, well, and even within our city limits, how do we envision that land in the future? Is this where we want commercial growth to be? Is this where we want residential growth? So we actually have two maps, and we need to make our decisions based on those guidelines, or how we, in the one instance, the actual zoning is the response to our comp plan. The land use map is what we see for the future. So it's, I hope I'm not getting too bogged down in the weeds here, but it's a big task. And guys, on planning zoning, any other comments?
No, I think you pretty well identified how daunting it's been, and there hasn't been in the past, since the time I've been on, or essentially very little formal training as to what our job is. And so we come on board and we make decisions, not really knowing for sure what the limit of those decisions are, or how far they expand out. And we don't want to, nobody that I know of on the P&Z wants to just rubber stamp something and go through and say, oh, well, we passed that. We are all concerned about doing the best job that we can do. And we all recognize that we need and would appreciate training in learning how to do our job.
You know, I will say that we have to follow state code, and that code applies to every jurisdiction, county or city, regardless of size. And the benefit in a large community is that they can afford some of the staff to carry out some of these duties. You get into small rural areas like this, and it's the challenge that I think that you've alluded to in your presentation is, how do we as volunteers take this on? And Gibbons & Pursley is one of the largest law firms in the state, and they just last year produced a land use handbook, the law of planning and zoning and property rights in Idaho. It is 658 pages long. And basically, what they've done is they've taken the Local Land Use Planning Act and kind of provided the case law behind it. So it's like our big government in DC. You know, they pass laws, and then somebody will bring a lawsuit, and it'll go to court, and court will kind of define what is and what isn't, what was the intent of that particular law. So in this particular handbook, that's what they've done. They've taken the Land Use Act and they've distilled it based on case law that's happened over the years. Keep in mind that Idaho had no land use laws until the 1970s. We did not even have planning and zoning. So it's a relatively recent development in Idaho. Now it's 50 years old. But there's a couple of things in here that I thought were pertinent to this conversation. It says that the comprehensive plan has one purpose and one purpose only: to guide planning and zoning decisions. As you said, a comprehensive plan is a constantly evolving document. Typically, they are updated every few years, but may be amended as often as desired by the governing board, and any person may petition for a revision in the plan as often as every 6 months. So, and one last thing. A comp plan, as its name implies, is a comprehensive articulation of the conditions and objectives that will guide future growth within the geographic boundaries of the city. The LUPA Act indicates that a comp plan and a zoning ordinance are distinct concepts serving different purposes. A comp plan reflects the desirable goals and objectives or desirable future situations for land use. The court has upheld that a comp plan does not operate, as you've said, as legally controlling zoning law, but rather serves to guide and advise the government agencies responsible for making those decisions. The board may therefore refer to the comp plan as a general guide in instances involving zoning decisions or such as revising or adopting zoning ordinances. So the zoning ordinances basically are the laws then at our local level. So when an applicant comes before us, we make decisions based on the ordinances, and those ordinances are based on that guiding principle, which is the comp plan. And so we need to make sure that, come back to what I started out with, we need to probably make sure that our current ordinances are in compliance with the comp plan. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think it's good to hear that from everybody who's in the room, because we don't go to the planning and zoning meetings and don't understand a lot of what happens in those meetings and your responsibilities. But it leads me to the next piece, to go to the city council members sitting in the room and to say, so here we have this comp plan, so how are you going to use it? Sterling, you're sitting back there.
I feel like the comp plan would be a way to help us understand our budgeting process and where we want to, what priorities have our patrons, which is the citizens, put forward as what they want, and then how can we look at adding money to that part of the budget and putting together a goal of what's attainable and feasible for our city staff to be able to do in the next year, or in a three-year view. Can we add sidewalks on this block or or whatever it might be? But I mean, that's how I look at it, is how can we adjust our budget. And
So this was a conversation the mayor and I had, because I told them, I said, okay, so, sorry, economic development, you heard my speech before. So who's going to drive the bus? We can all get on the bus, but somebody's got to decide, like, what's the first priority? What's the second? And as a council, we come to the meetings or we respond to the things that are brought to us. But now we have this little thing that says, well, here's all these things that we should be looking at. How do we get it started? Mayor, recognizing that, we have a paid part-time, quarter-time mayor position. And we have been fortunate to have a mayor who sits in that role more full-time than not. That doesn't happen in a lot of cities, but when it comes to all these new things that come down the pipe, one of the things that the mayor shared with me is, well, we may need to go ahead and put this on our agenda as a recurring thing every couple months, every 3 months, and start addressing the priorities that have been set forth to see, okay, where does it live? Who's working on it? Has this been given to P&Z? Is P&Z getting some education? Which, Mark, you and I have talked about how tough it is to come into a P&Z position, and then it's like the learning curves like this. I think it's important that we respect how important our planning and zoning is, because those things that they're deciding are some of the growth issues that we see when it hits the council's packets is, oh, they've already looked at all of these things. We have to trust them. And believe me, I have not always trusted P&Z because I don't have enough information. And that's on me too. If we are just there to rubber stamp and to just read whatever sits in front of us, I don't know if we've been elected to do just that. I think your service in planning and zoning is far more than what we give people credit for. When the mayor appoints, that's what I said. So, Mayor, we're gonna light some gas under all of these things. Do we have a planning and zoning that's willing to stay the course if we add more? If we actually put all their responsibilities in front of them Are they gonna go, yeah, didn't sign up for that? City council, you have no choice, you're elected. Now you're in it. But you also get to see this, I'm gonna put on my hospital hat for a minute. So once we strategically planned, we realized that things don't happen unless it's assigned out, if they meet on it, if it's talked about, if it's continually visited, if it's reported out. What an informational resource we have at our meetings to talk to the public about these things. And yet I find even in our commission meetings, we should be reporting out everything that we hear that affects the city, and yet it feels like we're a little bit apprehensive to do that. I challenge our new council members, whatever you set on, whatever's happening in those groups, bring it back so the public can understand, because there may be a piece of what somebody else is doing that helps to facilitate more interest, or, oh, you know what, we don't want to duplicate, or, wow, that's something in the comp plan, we need to reach back out to them and say, hey, you guys, this really affects our parks or recreation. So I think that's one aspect of the city council. I would say you guys are going to need to be more vocal about what's happening in the areas that you represent, because information is power, and power is what's going to kind of facilitate this. But going back to the bus, I don't anticipate that a council member is going to volunteer to step out and be a bus driver. If you are, please raise your hand, and I'm sure the mayor will go, you can do it. But the mayor is ultimately the bus driver. He is going to be looking at this and going, all right, what if this is going to have to come back to planning and zoning? What if this is going to be out of our city zoning officer, who sits there very quietly, which has read this from front to back already, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just curious, of those that have had it, how many have read this from front to back? Okay, you know how happy that makes me? It's like, I keep telling the mayor, as I read through to the end, I think, okay, only people who are crazy about this kind of thing would read it. But it's got good stuff in it. And I think even people that watch this, if they want to take a look at it, as soon as it is adopted, it will be put on the city's website so that people can look at it. It's got areas that it may spur some real excitement. Historic preservation. You guys, there's some stuff in here that I think you guys will probably look at and go, okay, so we're already trying to do this, but now we just need to share that we've already addressed this. That's why I asked you about a plan, whether you guys had a plan.
You know, we just adopted one at the county. It took us a year to put it together professionally. It cost $20,000. It didn't cost us a dime because we got the money from a different source I won't go into, but when we were talking about the Lore Foundation, I'm thinking that that might be a channel to fund the plan for the city. So we'll see. And to maybe finish this, is there's sort of a pecking order to all of this. You know, we come up, we recommend to city council, so city council implements it, but it's up to city staff to enforce it. Mm-hmm. And so that's another leg to this. We might do all this other legwork, but if it's not enforced, what's the point? And so I think it's important that we're all sitting here at the table, that we all have buy-in, but it's not just policymakers, it's also staff that need to be part of this effort.
That's part of the reason why I have to be a bus driver.
Well, just one second, John, I have one thought here. I've probably already lost with what you said. Thanks. So this kind of slides into economic development. If everybody will open their little their packets, and I have that, to page 35. Oh, yeah. Did I? I thought I gave you one. It's underneath that paper.
How many do you need?
So 35 and 36 is economic development. And I'm specifically bringing this up because we have economic development people here. And they have dedicated their time to having a meeting once a month to figure out what can we do to support the city, the mayor, our businesses. It is a really diverse group that represents the school district. It represents real estate, banking. And this group is very dedicated at meeting and disseminating their information. It's like a dumping ground, but we always say, okay, well, what can we do? So as we look at page 36, those people who are in here from economic development, I challenge you before January to kind of look through this and to see, okay, what can we do? Well, number one was continue to work with Main Street America to create actionable improvements. We're on it. That one's got a lot of fire under it, and you are going to see some things happen with that. And that board that's backing it up is actually sitting here. So I thank them for that extra layer of push. But I use that as an example of it can be bit off into chunks. And then when we say, all right, under economic development, what are we doing? Who's doing it? But this was the key piece that I asked Natasha earlier, as I said, okay, Natasha, so what? We've got all these goals and we've got all of this that's been handed to us. At the end of the year, how do we know we did anything with it? We don't have a tracking. We don't, is there a measuring tool at the end that says, well, economic development did this, this, and this? We can say, we addressed this, because guess what? It's still not a living document if you don't know if any of these things are accomplished. So one of the challenges is, how are we going to know if we did anything? Right now we got a document, but it doesn't give us any tool to say, yeah, check the box, P&Z did this. And I think that's a big piece of it, because if we go a whole year and there isn't anything in this document that we can say, yep, we've accomplished, then we need to revisit what's wrong.
So, Lynn, just a quick question. When, or maybe somebody else in the room knows, when was the last comp plan adopted?
1999.
And
99.
have we gone through that to see what was accomplished on that?
Well, in your spare time, Natasha,
No,
that would be-
I'm saying,
But
I'm agreeing with you that we absolutely need to visit it often and be more productive with it. I mean, because we've had one in place for years and we haven't utilized it. And I think it would just, the whole layout of the town and how things are run could greatly benefit from it.
And I read through it, and there wasn't a whole lot that was accomplished on it. And what I'd like to see happen is that each of the groups, every 3 months, revisit this. Okay, what have we done in the last 3 months? Not wait for a year, and have reports on it and talk about, okay, what are we going to do the next 3 months, and work it that way.
So, Mayor, I want to throw out a suggestion, but before I do, I want to turn this over to John because he's patiently waited to speak, and I'll sit down so they can see you.
Oh, well, I would say that I was on P&Z for 17 or so years, and the comp plan was used in every decision that was made, because I wrote a lot of those decisions
Okay?
and referred to the comp plan and the parts of it, the maps that Tony referred to and that sort of thing. As far as what was, so it was utilized, what all was accomplished out of it, I don't know about that part. But it was a guiding principle and used regularly. So
And that's
it was
great.
used.
And I think we need to continue with that, because like
Yeah.
Tony says, I mean, let's use it as a guideline, so you're not just going into a situation just blind
Yeah.
of what needs to happen.
My second thing, really what I wanted to get Lena's attention a long time ago, was related to the P&Z training. And I was on county for a little while and then on the city. in both of those cases, over several years, at least annually, I went to a training that was put on by, I don't really know who, Association of Cities or counties or the state, but it was at least one, maybe 2 weekends of training put on by attorneys, I think from Givens firstly. Is that not available anymore, and is it not being funded by the city for our
I have been
commissioners to
looking
go?
into
I'm not
that.
looking to you, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking general kind of question. Is that something that,
And I
from the
think-
start, we need to support?
Yeah, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, planning and zoning people in here, I think that's something that I absolutely agree with. There does need to be more training available. I am trying to seek that out and make that available, so I think that is something that is moving forward.
But as far as a 2 weekend a year deal, I think that's gone away.
Yeah, I don't know what's available now. I do remember both, I don't remember who the administrators were at the time, it may have been David Tate for the city, and I can't remember who it was for the county, but one of their things that they said was getting people to come to it. And I was probably the oddball that went to a ball, but that was, participation was a big thing, but it sounds to me like from the P&Z members here that you might get good participation, and it's kind of got some energy behind it. Anyway, I just
No, that's good
advocating for
information.
that training.
So I want to go to the council members, and this will probably apply more to those that have been sitting on the council. So if you were to, so the council members each get assigned to be part of different commissions, economic, library, airport. But one of the things that Mayor, and you can give me some feedback on this, I wonder if identifying something within the comp plan that affects, because open spaces, I don't know which one that would apply to, but the historic piece, we have somebody that's supposed to sit on that. Could they bring that back to the city as, okay, here's a piece, so that each one of the council members are actually utilizing some of the recommendations in the committees that they represent? That might be one way to disseminate out some of it, so they can look at it and say, yeah, economic development, we've looked at it and we've said, this is something we could work on, and we'll report back to the city, and it kind of takes some of that assignment pressure off. But something, I don't know, how do you guys feel as council members?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, because, I mean, if you try to take this all in one bite, you'll choke.
It's big. It's big.
If you break it up into smaller pieces, perhaps that's a better way to go about it, because this thing takes us from the problem that I think, that I see it from my city council spot and from planning and zoning is that when we have requests, it's transitional or transactional. So it's one person in one spot wanting to do one thing. And the resource that we lack is more of a total relationship piece. And it makes it tough to make a decision on whether you can, we should approve this or not, because we don't think about it, or we don't have guidance, or at least have guidance that we've referred to previously as an overall city. And I think that would be very helpful in making sound decisions as they come up. If we, if we're continually, both on the planning and zoning and city council, part of it, if we're continually reviewing it, then we remember it. If we don't do that, it gets stuck in a drawer. And, unfortunately, I think that's what happened to our prior comprehensive plan, is it got stuck in a drawer and nobody knew where it was. And so I think that's a great point to, if we can break it into pieces, perhaps even assigned by our current city council committees, parts of the plan and be responsible for updating or at least reviewing that part. I think that's a great idea.
So I was gonna throw a couple of examples out just to see, so you guys could see the process of when do you refer to this as opposed to we just do what we've been doing. There's been a couple of, just for example, I'm just kind of curious. So we've got this corridor out here by Mart. I kind of know the history of what we did to put in services to be able to accommodate development and stuff. But let's just say somebody goes and looks at a piece of that land and they say, okay, we're looking to develop that. We want to put in a 200-room motel. Okay, so where does that go first? Because honestly, from the council perspective, it's like, okay, before they purchase the land, they want to know a lot of things. So where do they go first? Anybody can speak up. Just throw it out
City
there.
staff.
Planning and zoning.
So they reach out to the city staff.
Planning and zoning.
Does that land with you, Dave?
Yes.
And so Dave, once this lands with you, like, is that a conversation with the mayor that this is happening, or do you reach out to all of the department heads and say they need to know this, this, and this, or is that all in your?
Well, most of the time, I look at it first and see how it meets with our zoning, and then I would go, then I go to like the sewer and water and see what's electrical, see what's available for that.
Okay, so it's gone to him, he's looked to make sure it meets everything, let's just say it meets zoning. But I heard in P&Z, like landscaping and all of that, P&Z has adopted and the council approved a landscaping, what do we call it, a landscaping? Design.
Yeah, ordinance.
Okay, so does that lay with him completely too, to make sure that they meet all of the landscape design now that it's in place?
It's too early.
Well, most of the time, if it's a commercial thing, they have a landscape design
Yeah.
that they submit with their plans.
So, well, they're just coming to ask you, like, what all do we have to have? Because I kind of, this was my question earlier, is when somebody's speculating and looking at a piece of property, and this is for economic development too, because we get asked, well, what do you have for, and what we try to do is have that informational resource of this building's available, or we've got land out here, we'll throw it out to real estate to say this land's available. But they're looking for that first step, and then they come in and they say, okay, we're looking at possibly, you provide them with all of the, here's all the stuff you have to adhere to.
In the landscaping, though, we have the ordinance, it's all listed in the ordinances. as
And those
far
are
as-
all online.
I don't know if it's online yet or
No,
not.
they're,
Is it?
yeah.
I don't think it's been as codified yet. As
Okay,
soon as it is, it will be online, available online. It won't be hard copied until they actually put it in, but it is on, it's accessible.
But it has everything on it.
I've done the development in other jurisdictions, and the first thing I do is look to see if it's zoned to meet my use,
right.
because if it's zoned to meet my use, I don't have to go through P&Z.
Yeah, that's what I said. We're
It's
just gonna
already
pretend for
underneath
this
that.
one. It's
And so
zoned
then it's
appropriately.
just working with the city, so.
So after that, does it ever have to go to planning and zoning? It's zoned correctly, will they have to see it? The development plan doesn't get reviewed by planning and zoning or anything. So then it comes to the city for, we have no voice.
It comes to the building department.
Okay, and the reason I bring this up is if we don't look at these areas and say, what do we want it to look like? What's in place there? What do we not want? You guys, there's no power to, they come in, you do what you do, and it's done. And so I think you guys just have to recognize that the power lies within you guys being connected to what's happening and knowing, hey, somebody's looking at this piece of property for this. If we really care about what the vision is, how does it fit this? Do we want, here was something I learned back in a presentation ages ago, and they said, be careful what you wish for, because your corridor could look like anywhere USA. And if that's what you want, is anywhere USA, just keep doing what you're doing and let the little things just pop up everywhere. And I know you can't control private property. That's one of the pieces, Mark.
So the design review and that whole effort that we made to put in place, that came from planning and zoning members. It was us as a group talking amongst ourselves that said, we need this. We looked in the code, we couldn't find it. And we said we needed to develop it. And so Randy said, you know, let's go ahead and do it. And so we got together and we did it. We did the work. I mean, we're willing to, I guess one of the things I have to say, I do not understand why this is still a draft. Why hasn't it been adopted? Why is it still, is there something wrong with it?
It had the people who put it together made some errors in it, and it wasn't graphically anything we could change. They had to do it. They had lots of things.
Who's that? Who's they?
The
people who actually wrote
that
it.
put it together.
Agnew Beth?
Yeah.
So that's in there? And
No. We sent it back to them, and they just got us back the final copies, and so now we're gonna, tonight, we should be adopting it.
You'll adopt it
No,
tonight?
Yeah.
it's on next month's, not.
Is it on next month's?
Okay.
Okay, it's
Okay.
not
I
on
mean,
tonight's.
it wasn't, when we met as a P&Z, it didn't make any of us really happy. When there was things I didn't like about it, Tony voted against it, and it was, you know, but we said, let's get it in place and hand it off to you guys, because we knew it was supposed to be a living document, and there's things in it that need to be, you know, revised. But it's like,
Let's get something
let's
that's
get things
actual.
moving, and I guess that's part of the frustration is when you work on this stuff and you show an interest and you put some effort into it, and then you can't get it to move ahead, and we don't know why, and you know, I show up here tonight and things face, and then
Like, where do these live, and who do we push them out to? The mayor said, well, let's first thing is to prioritize, and the question is, okay, well, it's prioritized according to all of the information. Let's not recreate the wheel as much as let's just figure out what does that look like and how do we start to bite off those top 10 priorities.
okay. If you push it back to P&Z, we'll work on it. I mean,
Okay.
in terms of, and the whole education, I mean, I asked for David Tate to put education on our planning and zoning agenda in August of 2022. And it's never been on our agenda. We've never gotten to discuss it as a group. Frustrating, because, and I finally asked Randy directly if I could go to a session. I went to Boise in September. But there's a lot of interest in moving things ahead, and I guess I just feel like, okay, let's get this thing moved ahead.
And the only reason why, Mark, that it wasn't on tonight's agenda is we wanted to have the city council have a chance to read through and understand it. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this, so that people understand it instead of just rubber stamping.
Yeah, no, and that's good. I mean, I think this meeting is a good thing.
It's a start. It's just to say comp plan, comp plan, comp plan. You guys, no one should hear comp plan and not know, if they were in this room, why this is important and what we're trying to do. And I think it's safe for you to approach the mayor and say what's happening with the comp plan. You know, let's hold his feet to the fire too, because for right now, he really does, he's the bus driver, and he's gonna have to decide how to start chewing this thing apart.
And with as cold as it is in this room, having my feet held to the fire.
Yeah, and we did not budget for heat. We are looking out for our community, just so you know. I do want to say one other thing, back to its draft state. I may have been one of them that, before you guys got it too, is when I first read the comp plan and did the visit over at the Vendome, I went, this could be a comp plan for anywhere USA. This is not about Weiser. It didn't identify anything Weiser. It was just like, you need to do this and you need to look at your transportation. And I went, okay, well, I want to know what can we do for our city? What is the plan for our city? And so I know with that, and Tony and the people who really said, this is just a generic comp plan, I don't want to pay for it. And that was what my answer was. Well, if you want to pay the big bucks, then you can get the one that applies to us. Well, you know what? Then it has no point. So anyway, I thank Tony and P&Z and Mark for also saying, no, we want something that has more meat in it, because this really does have a lot of things that we can latch on to and try to make some changes. So back to what will happen once we leave here. Mayor, I now take your feet to the fire and say, we would like, at the point that we adopt this in January, if you could at least let your new council members know if we could put it on the agenda, comp plan implementation, and then have you just kind of address how you see this implementation going. And anybody in the room, if you've got some things you want to go in and talk to them and say, hey, I've got ideas, or I would like to see this thrown to historic, or we've already looked at it, if you want to. But the biggest piece that's missing is, in a year, in December, how are we going to know if anything got moved? And so if you've got some ideas on that, I don't know how that tracking would work, if it comes just through a reporting, chasing. Natasha, you hold a lot of trying to make sure everything kind of continues to move, as well as the mayor. But so now I'm done with leading. General comments, conversation. Margie, you sat on the school board. You're new to the council. How does this make you feel?
One of the things, first of all, who did the plan? Like Tony said, they got it and it was not them, and they had a short time to look at it. So did the city hire somebody to do this, or?
Agnew Beck Consulting.
Okay.
It's on page 4.
So the city
Hired
this?
and paid for this, yes.
And how much did we pay?
Less than $30.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is not
And-
much money for a company.
Yeah, and I'm getting the feeling that planning and zoning, well, Mark said, let's get this passed, but also I get the feeling from Tony is that maybe, is P&Z happy with this? Are you ready to get this passed, or are you just thinking that we get something in order and then we work to change it, or I'm putting you on the spot, Tony?
Well, I voted against it, that's somebody else.
Oh?
And he told us up front his reasons, and I think a little bit we all agreed with him, but since we had the one negative vote, the rest of us, we were at the point, okay, we recognized that we got our money's worth. Compared to other comp plans from other cities. We got the bare bones, and you're right, it was probably something that they took the comments from the people of Weiser and they inserted them in there, tried to make it towards Weiser, although it does fit any town in USA. As P&Z, our level of frustration was growing that we didn't have this in place, because we knew that if we demanded more from the makers of it, it was going to cost more money. And we just didn't believe that if we threw another $10,000 out, maybe we would get a few different paragraphs that would be changed. And so cost effective, my opinion, cost effective, it was not worth it. Let's get it passed. Let's have our own P&Z people look at it in conjunction with city council and the staff. And when we identify things that need to be changed, let's change it. Let's create it and make it fit Weiser, but not necessarily pay someone who doesn't understand Weiser how to, their opinion of what it would be like. So get it passed, be in compliance, and adapt as necessary.
And how, and it then, what is, once, say we do adopt it, then what's the process to change it? Like if there's a suggestion or P and Z, what's the process then to change it?
Well, in P and Z, we have talked about putting it on our agenda every 3 months and having just whatever it is so we can talk about. A couple other things we haven't discussed that throwing out and have different people in P and Z reviewing different pages and at times deciding, okay, what needs to be changed? I mean, it's only 63 pages and there's 7 people. That's less than 7 pages of a person to go through and review. And if you find things that need to be changed, then bring it to P and Z. Let's change this, because I believe we have to go through the hearing process and all the legality of stuff to make changes. So it's not something we would do often, but it certainly is workable that we could have one hearing a year to make all the accumulated desired changes to keep it active.
And Margie, this page that's in your document, this is when we do adopt it. The resolution from the city goes right in here on this page that shows that this is the resolution, this is what we adopted. So you would amend the resolution and adopt it again and go through the hearing process and stuff. But I agree, I think an annual review of it to see what all needs changed keeps it relevant, and there might be a lot of neat stuff that you guys find, as everybody finds as they dig into it. But for the most part, I don't want, after that conversation, you to think that most of this information is just generic. They really did, through recommendations, they zeroed in on a lot more of what we're about, and you'll see that as you read through it. There's a lot of things that are very poignant to who we are, but there's a lot of verbiage that's just, it's comp plan verbiage that says we'll improve our transportation. But if you look through the implementation and all those things, like calling out Main Street, that's specific to us. There are things that they did go back in and really dive into. So would you agree with that, Mark, after?
Well, again, it wasn't what we wanted. There was things that we wish we could have gotten included. But I'm just like Clarence. I mean, we let's get this in place, and we were promised that this would be a living document that we could come up with an updating plan, and I'm assuming that's going to happen.
Yeah, there's
going
no
forward.
changes now. You guys can jump into this and start doing anything that you want. Well, excuse me, Mayor.
No, they're fine.
You can work with the mayor on anything you want.
Well, I anticipate they're going to come up with things on their own and then bring it forward. And that is perfectly fine.
Well, in general, we all pretty much had the same consensus on we need something. The last comp plan, like we said, it was in a drawer somewhere. It's not perfect, it's not finished, but if we worked on this until we got it the way we want it, we're never gonna have a comp plan.
That's a good point.
So the idea was get something in there, otherwise this town's gonna keep going the way it's been going. Everybody's gonna be throwing stuff in. We're gonna have stuff all over town that we don't want, that won't fit this comp plan, already in place before we get a comp plan.
True.
So unless we did this, we have nothing.
And I'll have to say this, it being on the chief, I'll take ownership of that. I didn't know what a comp plan was until it was brought up with when I was asked on the economic development, and I think it was this lady right here that brought it up and was asking about our comp plan, and I didn't even know what it was. And so I went back to check, and I was told we didn't need an update. And when I found out that it was 1999, I said, yes, we do, and we had a stiff discussion about that. But we hadn't budgeted for the cost, and yes, we got it on the cheap. But like CUNA's had just paid $200,000 for theirs. Okay, Um, And so we didn't have the money at the time budgeted for it. But I was kind of like the commissioners were saying, we needed something. We needed to move forward. We needed to not just sit there without an updated plan. And so if I would have known then what I know now, which at that time it was complete ignorance, I probably would have done some things different. But I think we have a plan that we can work with now, and we can make those changes. It is going to take work, but the thing about it is, we want it to be that way anyway. You know, we want it to be a living, breathing document. Because even if we work to get it just the way we want it now, things will have changed. And so, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I will tag to the mayor, because I can say this now that I'm about to leave the council. But after serving over 20 years, I drive around and there's decisions that we made as a council, and I just shake my head and go, what were we thinking? There's a road over to the left of the high school that, yeah, I was there when we made the decision to go ahead and put that road in. And what a nightmare. It's, yeah, every time I drive it, I just go, okay, that comes from not visioning, not planning. Who knew there was going to be a busy subdivision built right up against the, I mean, everything, you have to look ahead. You can't just do today. And so I think I appreciate planning and zoning. I truly do. I think we've got a really good group that has some, that cares. I guess that's the biggest thing, is it's nice to see your comments are very detailed. They help the council a lot. I encourage the council, read their details. And if you don't like or you didn't get the information, go to the city and ask, are there development plans? Are there anything extra here to look at? I think that that's a miss on our part, is that we don't always do all our homework. But that being said, I am excited to see that this is here. It will be on the agenda in January. Anything from economic development?
With my current economic development, I'd rather see money not be put into paper, but into implementation. And so I don't have a big issue with not much being spent to create this. Create it enough so that it's usable in a plan, and then spend our energy implementing. Because that's what's going to really drive the economics of the city and make it what we want it to be. Not the book, not this piece of paper.
Yeah.
And Lena, if I may add to, I think if nothing else comes out of this meeting, is that there are a lot of people doing a lot of stuff to promote our community here, to make it a better place. But a lot of times we seem to be working in isolation. And for whatever reason that is, it's just like the fact that we do have a historic preservation commission. I mean, that ordinance was created 35 years ago. We have a board. We meet on a regular basis. We haven't really been really communicative with the city. But one of the things that, such as this Main Street program that you're talking about now, again, I'll speak to that. That program was initiated through the National Trust for Historic Preservation 40 years ago, because they were concerned with urban renewal. All of our downtowns were being demolished because they thought that was the problem that we were having with trying to have a vital downtown. And so they developed this program that works in conjunction with your historic resources. So we have a preservation commission that is more than happy. We also have a nonprofit preservation organization. And we're going to advocate for that, but that's only one tool in our box. And we need to all be in communication when we're making decisions in planning and zoning about economic development in here. And even the school, I was thinking about that when we approved the subdivision out here last year. And we were asking, well, where are the kids gonna be picked up with the school bus? And what's the plan for that? You got this big, are all these kids gonna, well, they said, well, they're gonna go out on Ninth Street. Well, again, that's something that we're charged with doing, but we have no communication with the school district. And where kids get picked up and what their plans might be, and there should be some sort of discussion going there on a regular basis. But you and I were talking about that. The high school up here is already thinking about putting temporary buildings in because they're at capacity. That's all part of planning. And if we do nothing except every year come together like this and sit down, there has to be a better way. You guys have liaisons to different groups, but we need to somehow make sure that that information exchange is going in both directions. Sometimes on planning and zoning, we pass stuff along to you, and then that's the last we ever hear. We don't know if it's approved, we don't know if it was not approved, unless we make the effort to find out. And it'd be nice if there was just this active.
Oh, that is a good recommendation.
Absolutely.
That's a good recommendation. Sometimes people don't know what's needed until somebody asks. So that's a really good suggestion. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. They said they got their like what happened in the paper when, yeah, so.
For 17.
Yeah. Okay, last bit of comments. Again, appreciate everybody coming and at least getting familiar with who's involved, what are our challenges, what are the next steps going to be. Economic development, we'll be visiting on this in January. But any other comments or questions?
Wait, I would just say from my chair on the city council, I appreciate so much the work of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Economic Development Committee, in the work that they do and the support that they give us. It's invaluable. So I don't think we get a chance to communicate that as often as we should have. But know that from our chairs up there, everything you do is appreciated, and our community and the people in it are better off because of the work that you do.
And my last comment to the council members here is you do have a role as a council member, but remember, you are a citizen. So you don't have to sit and wait for everything to drop in your lap. You get to have a voice even though you are on the city council. So don't be afraid to reach out and don't be afraid to light that fire. Okay, on that note.
I would just like to say a lot of what Larry said. I so much appreciate every person in this room because you do make a difference in the community. And so I just want to let you know you appreciate it, and I thank you very much.
I'm adjourned. Maybe we have to call for the adjournment.
Let's go somewhere where there's fire.
Me.
Oh, yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I made the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Doesn't matter.
Thank you, guys.